Hama Hama, the Hama Hama, the Hama 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 dog. Welcome to Truth in Food Chef's classes. So today we're gonna do the Hama Hama dog. So if you've seen the first episode of Truth in Food, we end up with doing like a Hama Hama hot dog. So it's basically a hot dog bread that's like cut in the middle, and we fill it up with fried oysters and toppings and stuff like that. So today we're gonna do the bread. So we're gonna start from the end here. The water, I've preheated the water a little so it's lukewarm. It's very important it's lukewarm because we want that yeast here. This is the yeast. This is a yeast cake. The bowl is like not super cold because you want to keep the temperature, because if you're putting lukewarm stuff in it, you want to keep it lukewarm because you want to add the yeast to it. So in with the water, break up the yeast in pieces like this. Smolder it in. Use your fingers, don't be shy. Remember always to wash your fingers before you start. This sugar will activate the yeast. It's quite an amount of sugar here, but we need to have a little sweet bread, and it had to brown a little on the outside. That's the sugar that goes in and browning that also. Salt, I always like to mix up. So you get you mix up your yeast here with your one hand. Always keep the other hand dry. That's the best tip I can give you, because when you're stirring all this together, it's going to be lumpy. And when it gets lumpy, you will have it all over your fingers. But slowly have one dry hand so you can move the bowl around. Or even if you have something like a spatula or something stiff, you can scrape it later on. You have a clean hand. That's very important. I add the salt. The salt we also want to dilute all the way out in the water. So I take half the amount of the flour and sprinkle it in a little at a time. Just whisk it in. You'll get a little lumpy. Start to get a little lumpy. You don't want to put it all in at one time. Just a little. Make it like a porridge. So you can see here, it's like a porridge. You want to lump that in with your fingers. Get the rest of it in. Slowly, slowly, slowly. Here you go. And then it starts to get sticky. So we mixed half of the dough together and we added half of the flour. We're still gonna add the rest of the milk. We're still gonna add the melted butter and the 2 eggs. So it's very important. We take the lukewarm milk. I'll slowly pour that in. Pour it into the dough again. All of it. While the butter is melting slowly, I'll crack the 2 eggs. Make sure there's no eggshells in it. I will use my one hand here again, going back, slowly getting the egg in it. Just mash that whole egg in it with your hand. We can use the rye flour here. It's a little darker rye flour. It's just to get a little more sturdy bread, so it's not that white. And I like rye. It has a really a toasted taste to it. And I think that this is gonna be perfect in this dough here. Again, stir it up. We're gonna knead it afterwards, all this here. And the butter's melted. You can always feel with one hand if it's too hot, because you don't want to burn the dough in it. So now we're at the stage that is still like a thick porridge. We want to use the rest of the flour and get that in. We want to slowly turn it in. This bowl is probably too small for it, but that's the only one we had. So when the gluten activates, it will start not to stick anymore. That's the hard part of it. I think it's needing a little more flour. I'm gonna scrape it out. If you have a spatula like this, use that normal spatula, use your hand. It doesn't really matter as long as we get the dough out. So a little more flour on, just to still use one hand in the beginning, just fold it in. But be careful, it goes really fast with the flour, and it will suddenly be too dry. So you see the dough is starting slowly to being stronger. I'm still doing it only with one hand. I want to have this hand clean all the time. See, I'm moving this around like slowly, kneading it in. But it's more about like stretching that gluten and get that to work. That's the hard part of it. It will come together. It takes time. You never know how much you can follow a recipe, and you never know if the flour is the correct flour for you. If you buy a local flour, it can like be really hearty flour. It can be really potent, so it's like gonna activate that yeast. See, now the dough came together. It goes pretty quick at some point. Like, I want to fold that bread in. I want to like get a little gluten into it, but I don't want to get too much into it because it's not a sourdough bread. It is a bread that's yeasted with, that's filled with yeast, but you want to have like a dry surface on it. But be very careful here in the end. I'm just like talking like small sprinkle of flour, but that's it. Else it will get too dry. So now the bread is like still a little sticky, and you want it a little sticky because it's gonna raise now here. We're gonna put it aside for like 20 minutes. Now it's time to move the dough over to the bowl so we can rest it. You can feel like the dough is like getting really smooth. Put it on the side, like in the bowl like that, and then cover it with a cloth or whatever you have and put it in a lukewarm place. So now we waited 20 minutes and we put the dough on the heat here. It's not warm, but like it raises pretty fast. So as you can see here now, the dough is like all like raised up and like puffy. See, it's like, there's some tension to it. You're gonna get that dough out. Just a little flour on your hands when you're working, getting that dough out. Nice and easy. Oof. So we want to divide the dough out. So it's going out on a really cold plate, so it will like sink down. It doesn't matter because it will raise again. Actually, the more times you can remove the dough up and down, it will get stronger in the structure of the air inside the bread. So cut it in half, slice it over in half. It's still like a little sticky inside. You can see here in the dough structure. I don't know if you can see it. It's starting to form some small holes. Just slightly dust, not too much on it. Cut it in half, same sizes, cut them in 3. Try to divide it out so they're the same size. You can weigh them out if you want to. You don't want like, see, I'm pressing a little here. I'm pressing the dough a little against the table to forming it, to press all the air out of it again so it can raise up. It's still a little sticky. You see it sticks to my hand. I'm gonna squeeze it flat. Squeeze it flat, like really squeeze it flat. So yeah, 12 of these, similar size, 2 rows of 6. So a very important thing now, they have to rest one more time. So we pressed all the air out of it, and then we want them to rise again. Put a cloth over it. It doesn't have to be wet, just dry. Put them back over where there's a warm place to put them, okay? This was 5 minutes. See how big they already got. I always take and brush them a little with an egg yolk. So now they're all done and they're ready to go into the oven. So I baked them at 395. I preheated the oven and I'm ready to have like a rinse to put them out on when they're out in like 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes, 10 to 12 minutes probably. Ten seconds left. Here we go. Ooh, smells good. They turned out to be pretty big buns. Move them over. So because they are they want to be like baked, but still like very light inside. We have the bread we're gonna do the tartar sauce on top. It's gonna be a cottage cheese tartar sauce. I take this cottage cheese here, probably like 2 spoons and put in. Should be enough for those 3 dogs there. Half of this, like probably like 2 teaspoons of sour cream. Probably like 1 big teaspoon of mayonnaise. Stir that a little slowly together. So a little mustard, Dijon mustard, just like half a teaspoon, like a whole teaspoon of like mustard seeds, like a pinch of salt, pepper. I like to put it in the beginning, cornichons. If you chop it up, it'll probably be like 2 teaspoons, like in small rings here. Do the same with the capers. Chives is also like, I really love chives. Chives is such an important thing in dressings. I think like gives it this crispy onion taste and nice coloring. Like chop it very thinly. Here, mixing it slowly, just like turning it into together. You don't have to like lump it around like all crazy. Maybe a little lemon. It's a good. One thing is missing to this one here is the shallot. Be careful with your fingers. Very thinly, very slowly, you get like finely chopped shallots. I think the shallots here is gonna give you a little more kick to the topping here. It's a medium onion, but it's really fresh. I really like it. It goes really good. So again, the onion for the onion rings, like thinly sliced. Be careful of your knuckles here. You can do a little small incision here. Just see, I just cut this little piece off here. You can put it on that so it stands still. Small slices. Make sure they're whole. The rings are intact. So next trick is to fry the onions. So Ziploc bag, like this, spread it out like that. You have your cut onions, you have your rye flour. I like to give it some salt. You can use flake salt, you can use normal salt, whatever salt you desire. Flake salt is really good. I like it a lot. Pepper. Grind some pepper in it, so it gets a little like on your tongue. The pepper is like exploding a little. Shake that together. Then you put your onions in it. Like this. Keep it nice and clean. So just like tilt it together. And you can see the onion, it stole all this flour. So it's sitting straight on it. And I always fry one ring. If it floats up, the oil is getting hot. If it stays on the bottom, the oil is too cold. And just slowly spread it in, dump it in. It's very important not to stir in it right now, just keep them frying. And now they've been frying a while, so all the flour is stuck to the onion. So now you can move them around, because if you start moving them around in the beginning, they will like, the flour will go off. We don't want that. Slowly stopping to fry, floating to the top. Look at that. Oof. Okay, so now we're at the stage where we like already fried the oysters. They're just cooling down. I'm gonna take it off now. It's just gonna take the heat off the pan. I'm just gonna fill the tartar sauce, the cottage cheese tartar sauce in the bottom of the bread here. Trying not to spill all over.
We're gonna take the crispy Hama oyster, blue pool oyster, and put it here on top. If you had a bigger oyster, it would be perfect. It's a little too small for it, but it will work. It's okay, it runs down on the side a little. It's fine, it has to be a little smushy. Then again, fried onions on top. Your own fried onions you made yourself, not from a package. It's all on the top, boom, 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 classic, classic.
Here you go, your Hama oyster dog.